Hello everyone. I hope you are doing well today. I certainly am because I finally made it back to Canada. While doing so, I spent some time in Tokyo Airport pretty much all alone, surrounded by Olympians, trying desperately to contain myself and not go up to them and ask, "Are you winning, son?" Especially because they were probably being sent home for potentially losing, and that would be awkward as hell. One athlete I did not run into, though, was Laurel Hubbard, New Zealand's infamous transgender weightlifter, whose competition I am very excited to get into. But first, drum roll, I have an advertisement. That's right, moving up in the world, guys. Social pariahship officially over. Although my advertiser here really is out to protect us pariahs and pretty much anyone who doesn't want to be tracked, hacked, or have some random guy in Bangladesh getting their credit card and stealing their identity. Virtual Shield VPN. I have actually personally used Virtual Shield myself for 5 years now, and I have yet to see my weird search history of Dr. Pimple Popper videos and research on the deep dark depths of Tumblr be leaked yet, so I'm pretty impressed. Not to mention, roughly 60% of the 250 most popular apps on iPhone and Android share our data with other websites and advertisers, even the weather apps. One of the best ways to avoid invasions of privacy like this is through the use of a VPN, which will hide your personal information from the sites you visit. Virtual Shield don't even let their employees see what you're up to with a total no-log policy. Your most important asset today is your identity and information. Governments, corporations, and bad actors, but I repeat myself, are desperate for it. Encrypt your connection today, keep yourself protected, and for the next 24 hours, you can get 50% off Virtual Shield VPN in the link below this video. All right, let's get to our chat. So Laurel Hubbard sparked quite the debate on whether transgender athletes should be allowed to compete in the Olympics or not, with conservatives arguing biological males being in female sports will destroy it. And they did end up letting Hubbard compete, but Hubbard didn't destroy anything except maybe their sports career, with an epic flop of 3 failed lift attempts, so not even a single lift registered for the contest. And this has brought a lot of questions about what this says about conservatives' arguments. Clearly, this means transgender athletes are the same as women. The conservative myth of trans women dominating sports has been absolutely crushed by Hubbard. Twitter activists have been very quick to jump onto this and point out conservatives owe people an apology for their false claims, highlighting that clearly this is just a case of conservatives, no matter what, not wanting trans people to have rights and to compete even when they're losing. Conservatism is officially over. It's cancelled. I'm sorry, conservatards, but Hubbard's Olympic flop does not care about your feelings. And you know what? Conservatives would absolutely owe these activists an apology if we were to sit here and ignore every single critical piece of context to this story. But we don't do that here on this channel. So let's chat, because the whole insinuation that Hubbard losing in the Olympics disproves that trans athletes have an advantage is the most concave, smooth-brained take I have ever heard. Firstly, the obvious question is, on what scale are we comparing transgender athletes to biological women? If Laurel Hubbard were able to compete at an Olympic level with other biological males, yet also lost in the female Olympic championships, perhaps transgender activists would have a point here. In fact, perhaps we would have to consider abolishing the gender split in sports altogether. But this is not the case, is it? If Laurel Hubbard were to compete with their biological peers, they would have never made it to the Olympics in the first place, because, amongst men, Hubbard is mediocre. So the fact that someone who would never qualify for the men's Olympic championship, who is a mediocre weightlifter amongst their biological peers, who is 43 years old, well past their prime, can qualify for the Olympics and beat out young women in their physical athletic prime for a spot as an Olympian, absolutely does nothing but enhance conservatives' arguments that including transgender athletes in women's sports is a problem. We're talking about an athlete who couldn't even register a single lift in the contest, who is twice the age of the average competitor, and was able to just waltz in and represent an entire country in the Olympics? Why? Biological brute strength advantage. The point being, any biological female, the same age as Hubbard, who was the oldest competitor in weightlifting, would have never made it to the Olympics in the first place, especially not with the same level of incompetency and inconsistency. But Hubbard did because of an insane biological advantage. And the takeaway from their failure should not be, well, I guess transgender athletes are just the same biologically as women. The takeaway should be, holy crap, Hubbard is that incompetent of an athlete that even with all this testosterone and a male body competing against females, they still couldn't register a single lift. Also, and this is a big one, using the Olympics itself to argue about the transgender athletics issue is just a terrible idea. At the Olympics, we include only the most prestigious athletes in the world, the elite of the elite plucked from billions of people. This is not the case for 99% of sports being played and enjoyed on this planet. If there are any women in the world who may have the slightest shot of competing against biological men, it is Olympians. Most high school girls just trying to get a scholarship are lovely, but not Olympians. And this issue is primarily hurting them. And even in the case of the best female athletes and Olympians, beating biological males is far from the norm. The women's national soccer team in the US and our good friend Megan Rapinoe, that's how you pronounce it, I'm sure, competed against the Dallas under-15s soccer team and lost. That's right, to 13-year-olds and 14-year-old boys. You can go look up the results in all of the sports in the Olympics and compare them by gender. I mean, this is also starkly obvious in Hubbard's contest of choice, weightlifting. Looking at 2016, China won both the women's and men's Olympic gold, with their male competitor lifting a total of 352 kilograms and their female competitor a total of 262. Okay, so I totally messed up the weight class. This is not even close to Hubbard's. This is the 69 kilo and 63 kilo results. But this is the same phenomenon in every weight class. That is really damn impressive for both of them. Like, amazing. But if we were to eliminate gendered categories, the female champion wouldn't even qualify because she wasn't even close to the men's last place score. And that's not to demean her accomplishments, no more than mentioning that the score differences between the Paralympics and able-bodied sports would be different too. We are beautifully and awesomely different. And I'm really not here to rain on anyone's parade. I know transgender activists see this as a non-issue, and they'd say, look, women's sports have not been destroyed yet, so conservatives, you're just concern trolling. This is a conspiracy theory, but this perspective is missing so many critical points. One, this is the very first transgender athlete ever to compete in the Olympics. Hubbard is not a copy-paste of every single transgender person or every person who will transition. The very first scores for new categories or competitors in the Olympics are usually going to be pretty low and get beat out more and more eventually. And letting Hubbard compete has set a new standard that female biology is not necessary for female sports. And as activists further push the idea that biology has no connection to gender, any expectation that we must reduce testosterone in biological males, which gives them an insane advantage, before competing will surely become seen as bigoted. Two, while seeing one or two transgender athletes in the Olympics or high-level sports may seem like a very small thing to you, it is not to the woman who should have gotten that spot. It's not to the woman in New Zealand who should have flown to Tokyo, who should have had her chance to compete for her country but couldn't, because a 43-year-old biological male waltzed up and could easily lift more than a hard-trained young female fit athlete in her prime. Losing a scholarship, a paid-for education, or a position on a national or Olympic team is not a small deal. That changes someone's life. And these women deserve to compete against other women who are playing with the same biological cards that they are. And if you are a transgender activist watching this, you have to understand this sort of stuff is not helping you. It's not helping your community. It's actually highlighting that trans women are different from women. The same way it would not help if trans men started going to fertility clinics and screaming that they wanted to be pregnant with a baby this instant, otherwise the doctors were bigoted. It's one thing to say, we want to live our lives, leave us alone, let us be happy, let us have rights. It's another to force other people to deny demonstrable biological realities in front of them. Just think about that. So no, the loss of Laurel Hubbard does not disprove conservatives' theories. The entire situation absolutely proves them. And it's only a matter of time before the next biological male that wants to compete as a female is not a mediocre athlete past their prime. But you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps we are just going to have to play this one out to its bitter end before people realize. Full transition into trans athletes in female sports, and I don't know, we'll just see who gets most of the medals. I have some pretty strong bets I would place. And you know what? If that does happen, what is a few medals to regain our sanity? Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.